All right, before we jump into our deep dive into Addis Ababa and Bahir Dar today, we're gonna take a step back, kind of go up to 30,000 feet, if you will, and then look back in time initially with some historical perspective on Ethiopia. This is not going to be a dissertation. You won't get a degree after this because it's going to be very short, but it's important to understand a little bit about what makes Ethiopia Ethiopia from a historical and cultural perspective, a religious perspective. And to do that, Ashu, our guide over in Ethiopia, is much better suited. So Ashu, I'm going to have you jump in here, given your long history guiding in Ethiopia, to give us this very brief overview of Ethiopia, starting with the history of the country. So over to you, Ashu.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. I'm going to give this stuff, as briefly as much as possible. So coming to the history of Ethiopia, actually, Ethiopia is really, a very old country. It's home of the earliest hominids on Earth. Because of this, Ethiopia is often considered as, the origin of humankind. This is an area where Lucy actually walked bipedally, and so it's like coming to Ethiopia is like considering to be coming to land of origins. And the other important aspect of Ethiopia is again one of the oldest and most colorful histories of an African kingdom. When you say this, Ethiopia kept its independence. So as an old entity and ancient state, Ethiopia, along with Liberia, is considered to be the only African country never colonized. And so this helped the country to retain much of its heritage. And when you're visiting Ethiopia, so you can see all those stuff, and it's like traveling through chapters of history. You have everything, with its own color and markers. And especially to many, it's a bit fascinating in a sense that when you see the history of Ethiopia, especially in terms of traditional accounts, it stretches back to the time of King Solomon of Israel. There was a very popular and legendary queen by the name of Queen of Sheba. She was said to have been visited King Solomon of Israel, and upon her return, because due to the relation between them, they gave birth to a child or a boy named Menelik, who became the first king to establish the Solomonic dynasty, that the longest ruling dynasty in the world, all the way to 1974 until the period of Haile Selassie. So this makes Ethiopia connection with the external world also, very historical. And therefore, Ethiopian kings trace their lineage from King Solomon of Israel all the way to 1974. And since then, after the deposition of Emperor Haile Selassie, of course, the country was ruled by a communist government, which is called Derg, which was overthrown again in 1991. And after that, we have got actually, an elected leaders now. So the country is now following a federal system of government. I think this is in brief about the history of the country. So let's just jump onto the geography of Ethiopia. Equally, like, the history of the country, the geography of Ethiopia is also very diverse and fascinating. Ethiopia is often considered as a land of contrast. We have got actually, so many, diverse stuffs. But before that, just to give you a bit of about the location of the country itself, Ethiopia geographically is located in the Horn of Africa and shared boundary or bordered by Eritrea, Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, Somalia, and Djibouti. And of course, Ethiopia is the largest landlocked country in Africa. Since 1991, the country became a landlocked country with the secession of Eritrea. And the other fascinating aspect of the geography of Ethiopia is really, it's an extraordinary variety of landscapes. You have got high mountains, jagged rivers, towering mountains, sinking depressions, and so all these things makes Ethiopia really, a very, very fascinating thing. For your information, nearly 80% of the highlands in Africa above 3,000 meters is found within Ethiopia. And coming to the contrast, I think taking an example will be, very explainable. We can take, the highest peak in the country, Mount Ras Dash, which is located in the Simien Mountains, that the highest peak in the country with 4,550 meters above sea level. This makes it actually, the fourth highest summit also, in Africa. And we have got, such high range in the Simien Mountains. But again, we have got the Dalol Depression or the Danakil Depression, which is about 130 meters below sea level. This is like the hottest and the lowest place on Earth. Of course, National Geography is actually describe this place as the coolest place on Earth because of heat. So we have got such amazing range of diversity within the Ethiopian geographical formation.
It's really amazing, Ashu. The first time I went to Ethiopia and saw this view here of the Simien Mountains, I was just simply gobsmacked. I mean, it is extraordinarily beautiful. It's like the Grand Canyon on steroids. And plus, as we'll get to in a minute, in addition to this incredible landscape here of the Simians, you have these really interesting and unique gelada baboons in a lot of photos of the Simians as well. So you have something like this, and then, like you say, just within not a very far distance, you've got the Danakil Depression, which is, on the flip side, another extraordinary and very unique geographical feature of the country as well. So it does have these extraordinary and contrasting landscapes, which make it really interesting. Here's another incredible landscape. This photo is actually of Bale Mountains National Park down in the kind of south central part of the country. So I think it's one of the highest cloud forests. So this part of it in Africa, I believe, or I could be completely off on that, but you can correct me now if I'm wrong.
So, I mean, it's all right. I mean, just to summarize the stuff. By the way, when you see the Bali Mountains and the Simien Mountains, these are really, the two big, massive mountain ranges in the country. In between them, we have got also, the Rift Valley. So the Rift Valley, that's part of the Great East Africa Rift System. It stretches actually from Red Sea all the way to Zambezi Valley, but the Ethiopian section stretches from the Red Sea all the way to northern section of Lake Turkana in Kenya. So this Rift Valley actually divides these mountain ranges of Ethiopia into, the two huge massive, the Simien Mountain or the Simien Mountain Range and the Bale Mountains. And really, as you can see, the Bale Mountains, it's the largest cloud forest in the country. And of course, I mean, the range is also very, very immense. And the plateau itself is the largest continuous Afro-Alpine habitat on the entire continent. So the variety, or I mean, the variation is there really. Thank you for adding this stat.
Yeah, and as it says on the screen here, the temperatures really depend upon altitude in many cases, and in Bale and the Simien Mountains in particular, and Gretchen can vouch for this, can drop to very cold temperatures. I think in the Simians, there's the famous bar at the Simien Lodge, which they proudly proclaim themselves the highest bar in Africa, and also maybe the coldest bar in Africa, Gretchen.
Definitely, I could not agree more.
You need to bring lots of layers if you're going to be traveling to the mountains of Ethiopia for sure, because you're up at 10,000 feet at Simien Lodge. I'm not sure what the altitude of Bale is, but I know it does get pretty chilly at night as well. And then again, back to the contrasts, and we'll come back to this contrasting theme in this webinar and throughout our webinar series in Ethiopia, because there are just so many of these unique contrasts. But then you have the contrasts of these freezing nights in the mountains And then Donegal Depression can get up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So, and again, we're not talking about the country, a massive country in terms of size. You know, it's not a big far distance between the Bali Mountains or the Simians and the Donegal Depression.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ashu, back to you, just kind of rounding out the climate discussion here.
Yeah, basically, you know, as you already mentioned, the climate of the country is highly modified by altitude. Ethiopia is mostly, you know, a mountainous country. So because of this, generally, you know, the highlands experience, I mean, a temperate type of climate, while in the lowlands, we have got actually, you know, really it's hot. Um, Taking examples of the hotspot tourist destination, as you already mentioned, the Bali and the Simien Mountains are really, you know, they can drop to freezing at night, especially, you know, between late October to January. And when you go to the Danakil, it's really, you know, it's quite hot. And thanks to actually, you know, the mountains, really, you know, it's these mountains that moderate actually, you know, the climate of Ethiopia. And generally speaking, we have got two distinct rainy seasons in Ethiopia. I mean, seasons in general. The dry season that usually runs from October to February. And at this time, when you say dry, so the main part of the country is dry. No, there is no rain. But if you go to the southwest, still, you know, you have got rain. But from tourism perspective, this is the best time to visit Ethiopia because you have got really, you know, very comfortable temperature, and the scenery is really, you know, beautiful with natural flowers. Most of the area is covered really, you know, by clouds, and it looks very green. So this is a perfect time to visit actually, you know, the country. I mean, what you call the dry season. But then we have got the main rainy season that runs from June to September based on regions. At this time, especially, you know, in the highlands, traveling is very difficult because some of the off-roads are basically become, you know, impossible. So this is really, you know, the main rainy season. And but we have got also, you know, short rains, March and April in the highlands of Ethiopia. As you really know, very well know, nowadays it's very, very hard to predict weather condition because of global warming. So sometimes expect also, you know, very unusual rain, you know, in some part of the country. For your information, we have got a different rainy season for the Omo Valley. Now, May and June is, is a rainy time down in the Omo Valley, but it's doable thanks to actually, you know, the construction of new road networks down there.
Got it. Speaking of culture in the Omo Valley, I know a lot of people on this webinar and many visitors to Ethiopia are fascinated by the very unique tribal cultures in the Omo Valley. But there's incredible culture throughout the country and very distinct and contrasting, again, different cultures. So Ashu, if you could just give us a bit more of information about the different cultures and ethnic groups within the country.
Yeah, coming to the culture, really, you know, Ethiopia is a very, very diverse country. You know, almost we have got more than 80 different ethnic groups that have got actually, you know, their own identity, their own norms, beliefs, and especially when you go down to the Omo Valley, really it's very, very fascinating. In a small area, you have got nearly about 16 different ethnic groups, you know, and this is really, you know, a true African part of Ethiopia. You know, the northern circuit, which you're going to see, are more actually, you know, conservative, but down south you have got more actual liberal, but people with their own distinct cultures. You know, they lack material culture, but they compensate it with their own way of body painting, dressing codes, dancing, you know, beads. And for instance, you can see, you know, the Hammers are one of the most elegant and beautiful tribe down south. So the country is really, you know, very diverse. That's why some people call it like a museum of nations and nationalities. And at the beginning, we have said that, you know, Ethiopia is one of the oldest country never colonized. That stuff helped Ethiopia to retain some of its, you know, own distinct stuffs, like, you know, having its own alphabet, which is not changed. So the main working language of the federal government is the Amharic language, but the regions have the right to use their own vernaculars. In our case, to simply see, you know, some of the Amharic alphabet. By the way, it is a Ge'ez alphabet, G-E-E-Z, which is the liturgy of the church. So Amharic borrowed its alphabet from the Ge'ez language. These are some of the letters. It starts with Ha, like, you know, the first letter, and then the second one is Le, like L, which is actually the second letter. Since vowels are pronounced, you don't see actually vowels. So the first letter usually takes E, the second letter takes U. So it's space efficient. You know, when you write it, you know, you don't need actually to add vowels in it. So these are some of the Amharic letters. For your information, nowadays, the largest ethnic group in the country are the Oromo people. So they're using a different alphabet, the Latin alphabet actually, you know, to describe, or I mean, as a written language. And the other interesting aspect about Ethiopia is, again, you know, about the calendar. As you know, now the world is in 2020, but when you come to Ethiopia, it is 2012. You know, the Ethiopian calendar is, you know, it's type of Julian calendar. And in this Julian calendar, we have got about 13 months. So Ethiopia, when the world, you know, start to follow the Gregorian calendar, still stick to the Julian calendar. And as I said, a year has got 13 months. Each month contains 30 days, except the 13 months, which has got 5 days, which will be 6 once in a leap year. So in a leap year, the 13 months is going to have 6 days, but otherwise it has got 5 days. And this thing actually, you know, even the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, before 5 years or so, they used, you know, the leading motto used to be 13 months of sunshine because of this, you know, months. So this is also one of the unique feature of Ethiopia. And for your information, the new Ethiopian year changed actually in September. So September is the new Ethiopian year.
Okay, Yashu, from culture into religion, which plays into the culture as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, religion plays a great role in the life of Ethiopians. And of course, Ethiopia is often considered as a crossroad of religion. And nowadays, the predominant religions in Ethiopia are Christianity and Islam. You have got the different versions of Christianity, but the oldest church in Ethiopia is the Orthodox Church. And then we have got actually, you know, Islam since its inception. By the way, when you see the introduction of these religions to Ethiopia, especially, you know, it's really not quite old. Ethiopia adopted Christianity as official state religion in the 4th century AD. But Christianity was introduced as a private religion since the period of the apostles, just after, you know, Jesus. but it became a state religion in the 4th century. This makes Ethiopia the second country in the world to adopt Christianity, next to Armenia and before Rome.
Wow.
And coming to Islam, we can also see, Islam also is really, one of the oldest religion in Ethiopia. The Prophet Muhammad sent some of his followers to Ethiopia during the flight from Mecca to Medina. So as a result of this, Ethiopia accepted Islam followers from Mecca who sought refuge in the 7th century. This was at the time the Prophet tried to flee from Mecca to Medina. So Ethiopia embraced the followers of Islamic religion before Medina. This makes it really, a very old nation. And you can see one of the mosques in the background, which is the oldest mosque in sub-Saharan Africa, which was established in the 7th century AD, but then it was, renovated, and the structures are actually changed through time.
Where is that mosque, Ashu?
This mosque is called Nagash or Al-Najashi. It's found between Mekelle and Garalta. There is a town called Wukro. So before we get to Wukro town, there is a small town called Nagash or Al-Najash, as some people call it. So this mosque is found there. They call it like the second Mecca.
The second Mecca. Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Well, in addition to Christianity and Islam, which is a predominant religion, we have got actually other religions practiced in the country. This include Judaism. By the way, when you talk about Judaism, this is very, very fascinating because Judaism also makes its way to Ethiopia, very, very early, because it was connected with the coming of the original Ark of the Covenant to the country through Menelik I, a son by Solomon. So since then, the country used to practice Judaism, and there are still synagogues, in different parts of the country, and it was also connected with the Ethiopian Jewish, which actually are called Beta Israel. Most of them actually, moved back to Israel, but these people used to practice again, Judaism. And in many parts of the country, like the southern part in the Omo Valley, we have got also traditional religions. And so people, especially, attach these traditional religions with, fertility, rain, and, their surroundings. So still we have got also, traditional religion practitioners in some part of the country. But basically, the three monotheist religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, also make Ethiopia, as the crossroad of religions.
All right, fascinating stuff, Ashu. Thank you. And then we'll round out this this snapshot of Ethiopia with the wildlife. And there are those incredible gelada baboons, but spoiler alert, we're going to tell you why they're not actually baboons in a second. So over to you, Ashu.
Yeah, we said the topography of Ethiopia is very varied. So this topography led actually also, for an astonishing array of, natural history, including, the wildlife. And so when you visit actually, Ethiopia, you can clearly see that Ethiopia is also, a center of endemism. And this is, as you can see, these incredible creatures are considered to be like, really, one of the best secrets of the country. So in terms of wildlife, Ethiopia has also got actually, its own importance. And so far, there are about 242 listed mammal species, of which 28 of them are being, endemic. And interestingly, this endemic wildlife, mammal species can be also easily photographed, and, you can have time with them, especially, when you see, the gelada baboon, which is now actually considered to be a monkey species. By the way, this is the last species of primate really that now attracts scientific research, and there are still subjects of research, but they are the most terrestrial primates on Earth after us, or after man. And so it's very interesting and fascinating. You can see them, when you visit, especially the Simien Mountain. You can spend time with them. You can walk with them, and they will. At the end of the day, you may find yourself just in the middle of them. So the geladas are one of the um, endemic mammals of Ethiopia. You can find them in about 6 pockets, but the Simien Mountain is the best place to spot the gelada monkeys.
It's one of one of my most extraordinary wildlife experiences ever in the world, and that includes trekking for gorillas and seeing wildlife in southern Africa, going to the Galapagos. Is sitting in the midst of this huge troop of gelada baboons in the Simien Mountains. And we'll talk a lot more about the geladas and about the simians in our next webinar a week from today. So stay tuned for more about the geladas next week. But for now, back to the quick overview of a few more of these endemic species that you can find in Ethiopia.
Yeah, I mean, especially to focus actually on those species that's found like in the Simien Mountain. By the way, that national park, the Simien Mountain, is a World Heritage Site, and it was registered in 1978 mainly for 2 reasons. The first one is its stunning scenery, as you already mentioned it, and secondly, it is biodiversity, especially being center of endemism. The gelada are really one of the flag species there. The other one is the Walia ibex. This is exclusively retreated to the high cliffs of the Simien Mountain. And so the Walia is also another important endemic species of Ethiopia, which is exclusively found in Simien Mountain. There is also the Ethiopian wolf. This is the most endangered carnivore in the world, and the rarest wolf actually, and especially citing about Ethiopian wolf in the Simien is becoming really a bit difficult, but for sure, visitors can spot it in the Bale Mountains, and this is really a very, very astonishing creature, that one can find in Ethiopia. It's almost on the verge of, it used to be on the verge of extinction, but now the population is, a bit rehabilitating. So there are a lot of, wildlife that you can find in Ethiopia in the Bale Mountains. You can have also, the mountain Niala, Minilik bushback, the big mammals. So this is really very, very important. And the other important thing about the wildlife is Ethiopia actually is also considered to be a paradise for birders. Basically traveling in Ethiopia, you can find birds everywhere. We have got almost over 800 species of birds, nearly about 863 of these. We have got many endemic species, about 30 of them are often considered as Abyssinian endemics or Ethiopian endemics because some of the species are shared between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And interestingly, it's also, amazing because most of these endemic birds can be also easily photographed, and so you can find birds also everywhere. And nowadays really Ethiopia is also becoming a very, very important birding destination in Africa, and I think it's considered to be the 4th important place in Africa right now.
Wow. Ashu, excellent.
Yes, please.
Fantastic, thank you. We're going to now jump into some important information and reminders when visiting Ethiopia, and then we'll dive into Addis Ababa and Bahir. So thanks very much, Ashu, for that snapshot. Hopefully that helped to set the stage for what your travelers will experience when visiting Ethiopia. Obviously, when you travel with Travel Ethiopia and with guides like Ashu, you're going to have a much more in-depth, get a lot more in-depth information into the history and the culture. And as you can see, there's so much rich information and history and culture and religion in this country, and we're just scratching the surface today. But thanks, Ashu, very much, and we'll
Most welcome.
continue on here with some more information.